there is some smoke out there that the Broncos might be looking to trade up in the upcoming NFL draft. So I want to talk about the origin of this idea, this rumor, and then discuss whether or not it is a good idea for the Broncos to trade up. But I really quickly want to say thank you to everyone who consistently likes our videos. We have gone 4 straight videos with 300 or more likes. So you know who you are. Shout out to the crew that consistently likes our videos. One of my least favorite things about YouTube is I can't see who actually likes the video. Otherwise, I could give shout outs like I do for subscribers or people that comment all the time. But let's start by looking at Dane Brugler's big board, because I think this is an important starting point for this rumor of the Broncos trading up for a certain player. You can see who Brugler, who by the way does a great job of covering the NFL draft out of The Athletic, his top 5 guys. But I want to skip ahead a little bit because it's not about a top 5 player he's looking at. No, it's actually right at number 10, and that is Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end. This is the player that Brugler is kind of having a little bit of a tough time, not evaluating, but predicting, because he's 10th overall on his big board. So why would he fall to 20? Well, tight end position does not frequently go early in round number 1. Happened this past year with Brock Bowers, but no one thinks Warren is quite at the Brock Bowers level, although I still think he is a really good tight end, and there's a lot to like about his game. He's just not quite of a receiving threat as Bowers is, but still, I do like the upside here. Tyler Warren, though, if he was selected by the Broncos, would have an immediate impact on this offense. I think we could see it pay off from the jump. He's got the size. I don't think it's someone who's a little bit undersized, needs to put on some weight to hang with the big dogs in the NFL. Traditionally, tight end position is one that takes a little bit of time to get accustomed to the NFL speed, because in college, maybe you're not asked to block a lot. All of a sudden, the Broncos play the Browns week 1, and he's got to block Myles Garrett. He's like, this is not what I signed up for. I was blocking Maryland guys a few weeks ago, and now I'm going up against TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby. Oh, this is not as fun. So that's why the tight end position usually has a bit of a slow learning curve. But I don't expect Sean Payton to toss Tyler Warren out there in a bunch of heavy run blocking situations. But the big reason why we're talking about this today is because Brugler was on an Athletic podcast, and he talked about someone maybe trading up for Mr. Warren. And here's what he said. Where if you feel you are one piece away from elevating your offense, go make it happen. I think of Denver. It would be such a great fit. If you drop him in that offense, he's ready to go. I don't think he's going to last that long. Sean Payton isn't afraid to move around on draft day. He's absolutely right that Sean Payton is not afraid to make some moves on draft day. He did it a lot in New Orleans, but I personally would be on board with jumping up a little bit. Obviously, there's always a right price, and everyone's got their own limit of what they want to give up in a trade, but just by and large, surface level, yeah, I'm not opposed to trading up for Tyler Warren. I mean, for starters, I was looking over some of the big NFL mock drafters and where they have Warren going. And do you notice a trend? Everyone except for Daniel Jeremiah has him going 14th to the Colts. It's not gospel, but these guys don't think he's going to even sniff the 20th overall pick. Daniel Jeremiah has him going top 10, even earlier than Brock Bowers. Now, that part I don't really agree with, but it's the Jets. You can never quite rule them out for making, an interesting decision. So if the belief and the consensus is he's probably not going to be there at 20, then you got to jump in front of the Colts, who could really use a tight end. So, who's right in front of Indianapolis? It's the Miami Dolphins, who Denver has a little bit of a relationship with. They traded Bradley Chubb to Miami. But this is the trade idea that I cooked up. And when I say cooked up, I based it off this trade value chart that assigns a number value to every single draft pick. And basically, let's say the 15th overall pick is worth 1,000 points. Well, if you want to trade up to 15 with all of your assets, you have to combine them to be equal to 1,000 for it to be a fair trade for both sides. So here's what it is. For falling back 7 spots, the Miami Dolphins receive Denver's second-round draft pick. But that's a little bit too steep of a payment for falling back just 7 spots. So in exchange, the Broncos get Miami's 4th-round draft pick. So basically, you're swapping the first round, and instead of picking 20, you're picking 13, And the cost is, instead of picking 51, you're picking 115. But while that's a much big number gap, the player gap between 20 and 13 could be worth it. So let me ask you before we get any further in today's episode, do you guys have any interest in trading up for Tyler Warren? Or are you in the camp of, no, keep your picks. I don't want to give up the 51st overall pick. And it's a good pick, not going to lie. I can understand that thinking right there. I don't think you're wrong for thinking that. Me personally, I'd make that deal. It's like Inglourious Bastards. You make that deal? I make that deal. Yeah, I would trade up 7 spots in exchange for going from round 2 to round 4 if it means you land a guy like Tyler Warren, and if you're the Broncos and that's the number one player on your big board, for like number one player on your big board that you can realistically get, right? Exclude Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, those guys. If Tyler Warren is the number one player you want that could realistically enter your domain of draft territory, I think it's worth a little bit of a roll of the dice here. One big pro to making a trade in this year's draft is if you do move up from 20 to 7 and you forfeit that second round draft pick, you could still find a very quality interior defensive lineman, which Denver needs given how loaded this defensive tackle class is. As Dane Brugler points out, in 2021, there were 25 DTs invited to Indianapolis. This year, almost double, 41. So if the plan is we're going to go Warren in round 1 and then defensive tackle later in the draft, the difference between the 10th defensive tackle and the 15th defensive tackle is not that great. It's not that big. Whereas in previous years, it might be. So if you really needed a DT, you couldn't risk losing that second round pick because the guy you get in round 3 or round 4 is going to be miles behind that player. So here's a potential mock draft. If they were to move up to 13 and get Tyler Warren, they don't have a second round pick anymore. They have 2 fourth round picks. So I could see them going with Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State, in round 3. Then defensive tackle Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee in round 4 with the pick acquired from Miami. And then with their own 4th round draft pick, Barrett Carter, the linebacker out of Clemson. Let's talk about those 3 players right there for a second. Henderson, I think, could do a great job of fitting that versatile, I don't want to say joker because not everyone can be a joker, but versatile back, someone who's got some good receiving upside. I understand 27 receptions for 284 yards does not look like, one hell of a receiving back. But keep in mind, if you're Will Howard and you're throwing to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, and all those other first-round draft picks, do you really think you're going to prioritize Henderson out of the backfield over those guys? Probably not. I think Henderson's a great example of why production in college football can be deceiving. Just because he had 284 yards does not mean he can't be a good receiving back. He was just not put in a good opportunity to be a good receiving back because of all the talent they had at wide receiver. Put him in the NFL and you're going to discover he has a whole new element to his game. So Henderson in round number 3, I think could really help satisfy that need at running back. Then in round 4 with this new pick from Miami, I'm going to go with Tennessee's interior defensive lineman, Omar Norman Lott. Bias aside here, he is a little bit on the smaller end for a defensive tackle. He's like 6'1", 290-ish pounds, but he's still a menace. He plays bigger than his size, and his size is going to cost him a little bit in the draft, but the guy generates pressure on the quarterback. For being an interior player, he had 4 sacks and 27 pressures. Teams love finding players that can generate pressure from up the middle, and Norman Lott can definitely do that for you. And then the 4th pick in the first 4 rounds here would be Barrett Carter, linebacker out of Clemson. His old teammate, Trenton Simpson, he went in round 3 in last year's draft. Some folks down in Clemson and draft circles think Carter might be better. He might not be as fast or as physically gifted per se, but he does have a knack for putting himself in the right position. 11 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. That speaks to that right there. 7 pass breakups as well. He was not a stud in coverage, but as important it is to find linebackers that can cover, I think in round 4 you could find enough positives with Carter's game to go, yeah, I think we can roll with this pick right here. So I like the idea of finding a linebacker in day 3 of the draft. Denver really needs some help at that spot with Barton, a free agent, Singleton getting a little bit older and coming off a serious knee injury at his age as well. It just seems like a good time to replenish that position. We have more to cover on today's episode, don't worry, but make sure you check out this awesome Bo Nix jersey. It's like a t-shirt jersey combination. I think it's got all the pros of a jersey with a quarter of the price. So go to chatsports.com/NixShirt to get your very own Bo Nix jersey. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video. So, more to cover? How about my favorite game? Name a Broncos draft sleeper. Sometimes I premeditate it, sometimes I don't. This one I have premeditated. So I've got my guy. We're going to say the same person potentially when I count down in 3, 2, 1. Danny Trevathan. 6th-round draft pick out of Kentucky. He was a huge piece of that Super Bowl winning defense. And I think Trevathan is a good example of how you can find quality linebackers in day 3 of the draft. So that's my random sleeper. Let me know who yours was in the comment section and if we said the same person.